What we want to do is we need Washington to spend less money. We need more money in your pockets. We want you to get to spend the money and invest the money. We don't want the Federal Reserve manipulating interest rates, and we don't need the Congress telling us how to spend our money. But the ultimate correction there is very obvious. We don't need the 16th Amendment. We need to get rid of the IRS completely.
Yeah!
Stimulus in Washington, they're talking about appropriating money and passing out programs. That won't work, but an immediate tax cut is quite all right with me. The bigger, the better. But it ought to be matched with spending cuts. Yeah. Because if you have the tax cuts and you don't cut the spending, that's more debt, more printing money, and the cycle continues on and on. So what we really need to do is see some cuts. The big problem is where can we get a consensus on cutting? Well, I think I found the place where it's most easy to cut spending and it will hurt the least amount of people. It is true, in a constitutional government and system, we would have a lot less government. We would probably get rid of 70 or 80% of what we have in Washington right now. But it would be much easier if we pick an easier target, and as far as I'm concerned, the easy target, the place where we ought to cut spending, is all the overseas expenditure. All great nations end because they spend too much money, they go broke, and they destroy their currency, and they have economic troubles, just as the Soviet system did just recently. And we're now maintaining an empire around the world, many, many countries, over 100 countries, as well as 700 bases, and we're still expanding it, so we're still threatening more countries. But to maintain that whole empire is nearly $1 trillion a year. If we decide on a new foreign policy, very simply, it would mean that we would just come home. We would bring our... We would come home from Japan, come home from Europe, come home from the Middle East. And some people say, yes, but how can we protect our interests? Well, where are our interests? Our interests are right here in our world. On 2 occasions now, we've had programs in Washington that is designed for fiscal reasons, and that is to close down bases in our country and build bases overseas. But that represented foreign policy, had nothing to do. They did it, they passed it with the idea that they would close down a few bases or a bunch of bases here in this country, saying that they were going to save money. They never saved any money. But it meant that the policy was changing, that we were reaching out, going in the wrong direction. But just think of how much benefit, even if we didn't have net cuts, think of the benefits if we kept the same size military, brought them home, paid them here at home, and had to spend the money here and not in Europe and Japan. The truth is we could save a lot of money, and the major benefit of it is we would have a stronger national defense. We wouldn't be weaker. I think we're more vulnerable now than ever before. Our military, the equipment's in bad shape. And of course, we're more exposed than ever before. And it's the persistence in our presence around the world that actually stimulates the hatred and motivates some willing to commit suicide. And we have to understand that. We need to quit being in their face and putting our troops on their land when they don't want us there. We would save money, there would be more money here, our military would be in better shape, and we could start solving the problem of the deficits. Because if there was an immediate announcement that we had a different plan for the Middle East, that we weren't going to redesign the Middle East, we'll let the Mideasterners redesign the Middle East the way they want it, not the way we want it. By coming home, though, we could save a lot of money, and what would we do with it? We have to restore confidence by saying we would get back to a balanced budget and cut some of the deficit. Even though that would be a long job to do it, but just the announcement and the persistence, and if they believe this, there would be a difference in the value of the dollar. The dollar responds to printing the money, but it also responds to future expectations. And if they expect us to clean up our house and live within our means, then it's going to restore confidence. I believe also that if all of a sudden we announce that we're not on the verge of expanding the war into Pakistan and expanding the war into Iran and persisting in Afghanistan and persisting in Iraq, I think the price of oil would actually go down. Yeah. Reasons given for us to going over there was to protect our oil, whatever that meant. But you know, it really didn't do a very good job. You know, the oil was supposed to pay for the war. Of course it didn't. Production went down. The price of oil went from $27 a barrel up to nearly $100 a barrel. So it doesn't work is the big problem, and it costs us a lot of money, and then we created all the inflation because we printed the money in order to pay for this war. You print the money, of course that's more inflation, and that's one of the reasons the price of oil goes up. But this is the reason middle-class Americans are suffering today, and it has to do with our fiscal policy and our monetary policy and our foreign policy, and they're all intertwined. So we need a new approach. We can't continue to do the same thing over and over again. Some people claim, well, why don't we just keep doing what we're doing at a modest rate and maybe not spread the war and this sort of thing. But you can't do that. You can't maintain the status quo. What happens if we continue to do this and we continue to spend and continue to erode the value of the dollar, eventually it will lead to a financial crisis. And that is the warning that all countries get when they're getting into trouble. It's the decreased value in their currency. And this has happened so many times throughout history. So there's a big warning sign out there. And there is hardly a day now that we don't see something happening to our dollar.